We start with some neck rolls, trying to get full range of motion in both directions, 5 neck rolls in one direction, and then 5 in the other direction. The goal here is to figure out what our range of motion is for today. So not going too far or not going far enough that anything hurts, just trying to figure out how far our neck can go to the side, back, to the other side, and down. Next we move on to shoulder rolls, trying to move our shoulders up to the ears, back, down, forward, and then do that 5 times in each direction. So 5 going back, and then 5 going forward. Again, our goal here is to get the shoulders up to the ear, trying to figure out our range of motion for today without any pain or discomfort. After the shoulder rolls, we move on to our wrists, rotating slowly in each direction, again finding our range of motion, 5 times in one direction, and then 5 times in the other direction, focusing here on the wrists. Then we move on to full circles with the arms, going up along the back as if we were doing a shoulder press, bringing our elbows together, all the way back down, 5 times in this direction, really testing our range of motion today, seeing where our shoulders are at, and then we're going to do 5 times in the other direction. When we go in the other direction, we're going to go up, bring our arms around, back as if we were doing a pull-up, and then complete the cycle there. Next, we move on to our ankles. I'm holding my foot here higher than you need to, just so that you can see what is happening. You're going to bring your toes forward and back 5 times, and then we're going to make 5 big, slow circles, first in one direction, then in the other. Feel free to keep your foot lower to make this a little bit easier to balance, and also you can add difficulty here by closing your eyes to really work on connecting with the muscles that are balancing in your feet and ankles. We're going to do this on each side, similarly 5 times forward and backwards, and then 5 big slow circles, 1 in each direction. Once we're done with the ankles, we will move into a forward fold. Start with your legs straight, bend at the waist, let your knees bend, try to bring your chest to your thigh, then gently fold down. You can grab the back of your ankles, pull the chest towards your thighs, or just let your head hang, just sort of letting our spine loosen up here at a count of 5 to 10. Next, we're going to come back to our wrists, start putting some weight on them so that we can get them used to the idea of bearing weight throughout the day. We're going to begin by straightening our elbows and pushing our shoulders over our wrists, gradually adding a little bit of weight onto the wrists. We're going to do this backwards and forwards motion 5 times, and then on the 5th one, hold just a little bit just to keep the loop there. Next, we're going to take the wrist to the side. We're going to start leaning side to side. As you lean away, bring your fingers off of the ground to get a little extra stretch in the wrist, and then you can move forward back a little bit on each side as well if you want a little extra mobility work. We're going to do this 5 times on each side. Once you've done the 5th set on each side, you're going to flip your fingers in, pointing towards your knees. Again, elbows straight, and move gently side to side, work the wrist from a slightly different angle. Finally, one last wrist stretch. You're going to flip your wrists over, again straighten your elbows and lean back gently. If this one causes any pain or discomfort, you can also skip it. This one might be the most challenging of the wrist exercises that we've done so far. And again, the idea here is just mobility, not discomfort. Next, we move on to the toes. So we're going to start to stretch out our big toes. You're going to fold your toes under, gradually bring your weight back. You can either do this with your hands on the ground to take a little bit of the pressure off, or if it feels comfortable, you can do this with your hands on your thighs to put a little bit more weight on the big toe. I would go 5 times back and forth, and then on the 5th one, I like to sit there for a little bit just to get an extra stretch. If this already feels okay, you can also lean back a little bit to get more of a stretch on the toes. Next, we stretch out the shins by folding the toes under, sitting back. Again, you can use your hands here to take some of the weight off if this is uncomfortable. And if it is comfortable, you can lean back a little bit to give an extra stretch. I'm going to try to move into this position 5 times and then hold for 5 seconds on the last one, just to get a little bit of a stretch here. Now that our wrists are ready, we're going to start to work our shoulders and hips together. We're going to push back your hips in the air, heels towards the ground, so there's a bend at your hips, and your shoulders are straight, and then you're going to move into a plank position where there's a bend in your shoulders and your hips are straight. Moving back and forth between these two 5 times. As much as you can, try to keep your spine straight, so your back is straight. You're just bending at the hips and at the shoulders. On the 5th repetition, you're going to bring your leg up, get a little bit of a hip stretch, and then bring that leg forward into a lunge. We're going to drop our back knee, flatten our toes on the back leg, stack our shoulders over our hips and our head over our shoulders, and then start to work on our hip flexors by pushing our hips forward. It's okay for your knees to go past your toes here. In fact, that's actually what we're looking for, as long as we keep our shoulders above our hips. The goal here is to stretch out our hip flexors. We're going to lunge forward 5 times, and then on the 5th one, hold for a count of 5. This next movement can be a little bit of a challenge. We're going to stretch out our quads. In a future video, I'll go over some alternate variations that you can use for a similar movement, but here I'll stick with the one that I tend to use in my own routine, just grabbing the back foot, trying to stack my shoulders over my hips, and then pushing my hips forward in order to get a quad stretch. I like to do this 5 times, and then on the 5th one, hold for a count of 5, just to figure out where my range of motion is for the day. Next, we're going to work on stretching out the hamstrings. Again, I will go over some variations in a future video, but for myself, I like to start with this front split variation. You can also bring your hips back to make this a little bit easier. I like to lean forward and try to bring my chest to my knee, and then pull back 5 times, and then on the 5th one, hold for a count of 5. Next, we're going to stretch our hips and glutes by bringing that foot into a pigeon pose. Again, I'll go over some variations of this in a future video, but if you can, you'll make the front shin parallel to the top of your mat, back leg long. You're going to bring your chest down to your knee, again 5 times, and then hold for a count of 5 on the 5th one. Now we move into stretching out the IT band on the outside of our leg. We're going to straighten out one leg, bring the other leg over. As much as we can, try to stack the knees, although this may or may not happen depending on where you're at flexibility-wise. Straighten up your upper body and try to bend at the waist to bring your stomach forward a little bit. Depending on where you are tight, you may feel this all the way up by the hip, or down by the ankle on the side of the calf, or anywhere in between. We're trying to stretch that whole line out. Again, we're going to do 5 times forward and back, and then hold for a count of 5. From there, we move into a side stretch to get the obliques and leading into the hip on the same side. We're going to straighten out one leg, make a figure 4 position, gently try to reach over. The goal here is not necessarily to touch your ankle or your toes or anything like that, but mostly to feel a stretch in the side muscles kind of going into the hip. Again, reach 5 times and then hold for a count of 5. Now we repeat the whole sequence on the other side. Come back to this position with the hips in the air, straighten out your shoulders, straighten out your legs, Raise the other leg this time, so whichever leg you did the first time, raise the other one, and then bring it forward into a lunge, and we begin the sequence on the other side. Here we're going to put our knee down, flatten out our toes, stack our shoulders over our hips, and do 5 forward lunges, and then hold for a count of 5 on the 5th one, stretching out our hip flexor, just as we did on the other side. Again, we move into a quad stretch, variation hereof, and then we're going to grab your back foot, stack your shoulders over your hips, push your hips forward 5 times, and then hold for a count of 5. Next, into a hamstring stretch variation, leaning forward 5 times, hold for a count of 5. Here we move on to the hip and glute stretch again, making the front leg, the shin of that leg, parallel to the top of your mat, straightening out the back leg, leaning forward 5 times, hold for a count of 5. Now we follow up with the IT band stretch on the other side, straightening the other leg this time, stacking one knee on top of the other, straightening your upper body and leaning forward at the hip 5 times, and then holding. Following up with the oblique stretches on the other leg, reaching 5 times over, straight leg, and then hold, trying to get a stretch in the side, going into the hip on the same side where the leg is bent. Next, we're going to release the mid-back, placing a foam roller under our mid or upper back. You can also do this with blocks or the side of a chair. You're going to place the foam roller under your mid-back, hands on your head, and then crunch in and expand back, letting your spine open up a little bit. I like to do this 5 times and then hold a little bit, let my spine open up on the 5th one. From here, we're going to do a little bit of work to strengthen the neck, starting by nodding forward 10 times, and then bringing our head from side to side 10 times. I find that this helps start to release the neck, especially if something happened, I slept funny, my neck is not quite moving the way that I would like it to. I find this to be a helpful way to start to get the muscles in the neck working properly to avoid cricks and things like that. From here, we're going to go into some chest stretches, flipping over, placing one hand out at a 90-degree angle, and then bringing the other leg open, kind of twisting the body. The idea here is to stretch the chest on the same side as the arm that is bent. Oscar's going to come in and help out here, which is very helpful of him. I'm going to hold for a count of 5, and then do the same thing on the other side. Place your arm out at a 90-degree angle, bring your chest towards the ground, take the top leg and pull it back a little bit to get a twist, and then hold the stretch for a count of 5. And that's going to bring an end to this routine. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video.